The first lie tasted like bleach. It was a sharp chemical tang that caught in the back of my throat as I stood in the laundry room of a house that was not my own. My son Liam had just told me that the guest room, my room, had to be repainted, a sudden urgent project. He said the fumes might be bad for me, so it was best if I stayed out for the day. I found the old paint can later tucked behind the furnace. It was bone dry with a skin of cracked latex across the top, likely untouched since the house was built. There were no fumes, there was no project, there was only the lie, sterile and suffocating, designed to make me disappear for a few hours. That was the day I knew I hadn't moved into a home, I had moved into a strategy. It began 3 months earlier on a crisp autumn day in my small cottage in Portland, Oregon. The house was a part of me, its cedar shingles smelling of rain and time, its garden a riot of peonies and heirloom tomatoes I'd nurtured for 35 years. It was where my husband David and I had raised Liam, where his laughter still seemed caught in the sunbeams that slanted across the worn floorboards after David passed, and a minor stroke made the stairs a daily mountain to climb. Liam and his wife Jessica presented their solution. They sat at my kitchen table, their faces earnest over glossy real estate brochures for a new development near Seattle. "It's a fresh start for us, Mom," Liam had said, his hand covering mine. His touch felt different now, not like the small, trusting hand I used to hold, but like a negotiation and a place for us to finally take care of you. A beautiful suite downstairs, no stairs, a garden you can design yourself. You'll be part of everything. Jessica, her smile as bright and brittle as sponge sugar, nodded in agreement. "We're a family, Adeline. It's what families do." So I did what I believed mothers were meant to do. I dismantled my life piece by painful piece. I sold the cottage that held my history, gave away the sturdy oak furniture David had built, and cashed in the bonds he had so carefully set aside for my old age. The entire sum, every last cent of my past and my security, became the down payment on their sprawling 5-bedroom house in a soulless suburb where every lawn was an identical shade of green. It was a house built of promises, but I would soon learn its foundation was hollow. The first crack appeared the day I arrived. My suitcase, still zipped, stood sentinel by the door of my room, a converted office with beige walls and a single window overlooking a fence. Liam stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his face tight with a resentment that felt ancient. "You just moved in, and you're already ruining everything," he said, his voice a hammer blow in the quiet hall. "Because of you, Owen doesn't have his own room anymore. He's sleeping on a pull-out in the playroom. How do you not see the problem here?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. I had been in the house for less than an hour. I had just driven away from the only home I'd ever truly known the scent of my sold-off roses still clinging to my coat. But here my very presence was an inconvenience, a disruption to a life I had financed. Jessica hovered in the background, polishing an already gleaming countertop, her silence a ringing indictment. I was not a welcome mother. I was a problem to be managed. That night I lay on the stiff new mattress, listening to the unfamiliar hum of the house from across the hall. I heard my grandson Owen begin to cry, a soft, sleepy whimper that pulled at a raw nerve in my chest. I heard Liam mutter a curse, followed by the sharp click of a door closing. No one went to the child, no one came to comfort me. I had traded the last bastion of my independence for the illusion of belonging, and the price was my own invisibility. The days that followed were a master class in subtle erasure. Jessica would make coffee, but only enough for two. I was gently reminded not to run the dishwasher until it was optimally full, which it never was. When my single plate and mug were added, my favorite reading lamp from my old living room was moved to their master bedroom because the light was softer there. They were not cruel in overt ways, their tactics were far more insidious. It was a careful, quiet, constant reinforcement that I was living on their terms in their space, even though my life savings had paid for the very roof over their heads. One afternoon I sat in the living room trying to read. Liam and Jessica were in the kitchen, their voices low but sharp. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the house's open plan design carried their words like a current. I just don't know how we're going to swing the property taxes next year. Liam sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. And Owen needs braces. It's always something. Well, we wouldn't be in this position if we had more liquid assets. Jessica's voice was clipped, pointed. Maybe you should talk to her about, the rest of her portfolio. Are you kidding? She barely agreed to the down payment. Liam scoffed. She guards that retirement account like it's the crown jewel. She thinks it's supposed to last her another 20 years. A cold dread, slick and oily, seeped into my bones. They weren't just resentful of my presence, they were assessing my worth, calculating my future as a line item on their budget. The conversation ended, but the silence it left behind was terrifying. They didn't see me as a mother to be cared for, they saw me as an asset to be liquidated. That evening I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the small notebook I kept in my purse. It was meant for grocery lists, for reminders to take my blood pressure medication. Instead, with a hand that trembled slightly, I wrote, Day 1, my name is Adeline Vance. I sold my home to buy theirs, and today I learned my remaining life is a financial problem they need to solve. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. I was folding towels, a task no one had asked me to do, a small attempt to feel useful in a house that barely acknowledged my existence. Mrs. Adeline Vance, a cheerful professional voice asked. Yes, speaking. This is Marcia with Pacific Crest Bank. I'm just calling to confirm your application for a home equity line of credit for $250,000. We've received the initial paperwork, but we're just missing a few tax documents to proceed. The warmth from the freshly dried towels vanished from my hands. My knees felt weak. Excuse me, I didn't apply for any loan. Marcia's cheerful tone faltered. The application to leverage your property on Aspen Grove Lane. Ma'am, you signed the initial authorization last week. I never signed anything, I repeated, my voice a hoarse whisper. A long humming pause stretched over the line. Ma'am, she said, her voice now cautious and tight, would you mind confirming the last 4 digits of your social security number? I gave them to her. There was another pause, filled with the soft clicking of a keyboard. I see, she said finally, her tone utterly changed. In that case, Mrs. Vance, I think you should come into our branch office as soon as you possibly can. By noon I was sitting under the cold fluorescent lights of the bank, a printout of the loan application in my trembling hands. There, it was, my name, my address, my social security number, and a signature. It was a crude imitation of my cursive, but the "I" was too sharp, the "V" too slanted. It was the signature of someone in a hurry, someone who had seen my name on checks and documents, but didn't know the intimate rhythm of my hand, someone who didn't know I never ever looped the tail of my E. I knew who had done this, and the grief that had been my instant companion for months did not shatter me. It crystallized into a diamond-hard certainty. I walked out of that bank, not as a victim, but as a woman with a purpose. That night, I helped Jessica set the table, my movements calm and deliberate. 4 plates, 4 glasses. Liam came home late, his face a thundercloud of stress. During the tense, silent dinner, I slid the forged document onto the center of the table. Liam looked down at it, then up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning panic. What's this you tell me? I said, my voice quiet, but carrying the weight of an ultimatum. I watched the blood drain from his face as he recognized the bank's logo. I got a call today, I explained softly. Apparently, I'm borrowing $250,000. Jessica dropped her fork. It clattered onto her plate with a deafening sound. And it turns out, I continued, my gaze locked on my son, that someone forged my name to make it happen. I wonder, Liam, who would have my personal information, who would have my trust? He shot to his feet, the chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. What do you want me to say? He snapped, his voice cracking. You live here. We're struggling, Mom. You know that. You see us drowning. So you forged my name. I borrowed against our house. You forged my name. I repeated the words like stones. He slammed his fist on the table. Owen flinched. You don't understand. Everything was fine until you moved, and the rage, raw and unfiltered, finally erupted. You have no idea what it's like. You ruined our lives. Get Out his words hung in the air, a declaration of war. But then I did something he never expected. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I slowly reached into the pocket of my cardigan, pulled out the small sleek voice recorder I had bought 2 weeks ago, and pressed the stop button. The tiny red light blinked off his face, contorted from fury to pure animal fear. "What is that?" I tucked it back into my pocket. "Proof," I said. He stared at me, at the quiet, unassuming old woman he thought he could erase, and for the first time he seemed to see me. "You recorded me," he whispered. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm not a fool," I said, my voice clear and steady, and this time I needed the world to believe me. I stood up, my old bones aching, but my spine rigid with a newfound strength. "I'll go," I said. "Good," he scoffed, trying to regain his footing. I nodded, and for the first time in months I smiled. It was not a happy smile, it was a smile of terrible clarity. I finally knew I wasn't the one who had failed this family. They had failed me, and they were about to discover what happens when the woman they considered powerless stops protecting them. They didn't throw me out that night. Instead, they began a campaign of psychological warfare. The next morning, Jessica stood in front of the coffee machine, blocking it with her body, while she meticulously cleaned the counter for 10 minutes. My favorite blanket vanished, accidentally donated to charity. My vitamins were replaced with a cheaper brand that made me nauseous. I was a ghost in their house, but a ghost who was now listening. They had taught me to be invisible. Now I would use it as my shield and my sword. I bought 2 more recorders, tiny and voice activated. I kept a meticulous log in my notebook. Morning, Jessica tells Owen not to talk to Grandma because she's feeling tired and needs her space. Afternoon, Liam on the phone in the garage, his voice sharp. No username again. She barely knows how to use the internet. Just use the same signature. It worked last time. Evening, they order takeout and forget to ask if I want anything. I wasn't just collecting evidence for a court, I was collecting it for myself. I was building a fortress of facts against the gaslighting and the guilt. One evening, I sat on the floor of my closet, the door shut, and played back a recording. She just takes up so much space. Jessica's voice high and annoyed. What does she even do all day? Breathe and judge us. Liam's laugh was low and cruel. Trust me, the moment she's gone, this house will finally run smoothly. It feels like a coffin with her in it. The silence that followed was worse than the words. They were comfortable hating me. That was the moment my heart stopped breaking and began to harden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a rough patch. They didn't love me. They tolerated me. They resented me. And they were using me. And now I had proof. The next morning, as I sat alone in my room, a memory surfaced. A rainy afternoon years ago, David and I were cleaning out the attic. He had handed me a battered manila folder. "House docs, Addie," he'd said. "Never throw these out, you never know." I had tucked it into the bottom of my cedar chest, a chest that now sat in the corner of my room, a relic of a life I no longer lived. With a surge of adrenaline, I knelt and opened the chest. The scent of cedar and lavender filled the air. Under a stack of old quilts there, it was the folder. With trembling fingers, I spread the contents on the floor. The deed to my old cottage, tax receipts, insurance forms, and the closing documents for this house. I scanned the pages, my eyes racing over the legal jargon until they landed on a single bolded line: owner of record Adeline M. Vance. No cosigner, no joint ownership, no transfer of title. The house, this house that had become my prison, was still legally, unequivocally mine. We had talked about putting it in their names. Liam had said it would be easier for taxes and insurance later on. I had agreed in principle, but the final paperwork had been delayed. Something about needing a new insurance quote under their names, and in the chaos of the move it had been postponed. They had forgotten, but I hadn't signed. I sat on the floor for a long time, the document in my lap, the realization settling over me, not with triumph, but with a profound and heavy stillness. They thought they owned the roof over their heads. They were merely guests in my home, and they didn't even know it. That evening, while they bickered in the driveway over a forgotten grocery item, I made a call. "Mr. Alistair Finch's office, please." Alistair had handled David's estate. His voice, when he came on the line, was a welcome anchor of sanity. "Adeline, my goodness, it's been too long, too long." "Alistair," I agreed slowly, carefully. I explained everything: the sale of my cottage, the down payment, the unfulfilled promise to transfer For the title, the forged loan, the recordings. He was silent for a full minute. I could hear the faint sound of him breathing. Then he said, his voice imbued with a cold fury, I see. I will be in Seattle next week. I will clear my schedule. We will meet. Adeline, you are not the first person I have heard a story like this from, but I have a feeling you will be the first one to write a proper ending to it. Hanging up the phone, I felt a shift deep inside me. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. They had underestimated the woman who balanced the books for David's small construction company for 20 years. They had forgotten the woman who taught their son how to read a contract. They thought age had made me soft. They were about to learn that age for some simply sharpens the steel. The days that followed were a quiet whirlwind of preparation. Following Alistair's precise instructions, I opened a new checking account under my maiden name at a bank downtown. I rented a P.O. box. I began piece by piece to move my most treasured possessions, the small meaningful things, into a storage unit. I rented 2 towns over my mother's locket, David's worn leather-bound copy of Moby Dick, the box of Owen's baby drawings I had saved. Jessica thought sh. He was slowly erasing me from the house. I was simply reclaiming my life from the ashes. Alistair began the legal assault. He filed a cease and desist with the lending company, freezing the fraudulent loan application and sending Liam's plans into a tailspin. He filed a formal affidavit with the county reasserting my sole ownership of the property and placing a lien on it to prevent any further financial maneuvering. He drafted an emergency will. My new will was simple. If I passed, my entire estate would be divided among the Portland Rose Garden, a local animal shelter, and a scholarship fund for women in need. Liam and Jessica were explicitly excluded by name, and should my death occur under any suspicious circumstances, Alistair had full authority to release every second of my recordings to the authorities and pursue criminal charges. Every step was calculated, every polite nod I gave at the dinner table, every "Thank you, dear," when Jessica handed me a bowl of reheated soup, was a move on a chessboard. Only I could see they thought I was withering away in my room. I was orchestrating their downfall from the inside. The end came on a misty Wednesday morning. The moving van, as requested, was unmarked and discreet. The crew, professional and silent, had my few remaining boxes and suitcases loaded in under an hour. I didn't say goodbye. I was done with goodbyes. I had watched this house morph from a promise into a prison. Now it was just a property. Liam and Jessica were out attending a meeting with a financial advisor, undoubtedly trying to understand why their world was suddenly crumbling. They didn't need to be present for the finale. The message would be waiting on the gleaming quartz island in the kitchen. I placed a large, elegant wooden box Alistair had provided. It looked like a gift. Inside, nestled in velvet lining, was the dossier of their deceit, a certified copy of the deed with my name highlighted, the official fraud complaint filed with the bank, 2 small USB drives labeled Liam and Jessica, and finally a single heavy sheet of cream-colored cardstock with a letter typed in crisp, clear font: "To whom it may concern, this house no longer belongs to you. It never did. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Any communication should be directed to my legal counsel, Mr. Alistair Finch, whose card is enclosed. Do not attempt to contact me." I left the box next to a stack of their unpaid bills. The silence of the house didn't mourn my departure, it sighed in relief. By noon I was stepping across the threshold of my new home, a stunning modern apartment in a senior living community in Bremerton with a balcony that overlooked the Puget Sound. The air smelled of salt and freedom. The building manager handed me my keys with a warm smile. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vance." For the first time in a year, I believed it. My name was on the lease, my signature unfurled and free. The armchair by the window was deep and soft. There was no one here to question why I needed silence or dignity, only me, and at last that was enough. That night my phone began its frantic symphony. Missed calls from Liam, dozens of them, a cascade of red notifications. I didn't block him. I let him stare at my name on his screen, let him feel the crushing weight of being ignored. A week later a letter arrived from Alistair. The bank's internal investigation, spurred by my complaint, had been swift. Jessica, who had filed the fraudulent paperwork online from her work computer was fired. Their financial ruin was now absolute and of their own making. Liam sent a text, "I'm sorry, Mom," but he wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he had lost. I waited until my hand was steady, until the words no longer stung my own heart. I attached a single audio file, the one where he wished me dead, and I typed one final message: "You were once the child I loved most, the man you have become. I do not know him." I hit send, then I muted his number forever. Some doors once shut should remain that way. I used to believe that motherhood meant a quiet act of erasure, that the best mother was the one who held everyone else up while slowly fading into the background. I don't believe that anymore. My new life is not about forgetting the past, but about finally living for myself. I take a ferry to Seattle twice a week for a botany class at the university, rediscovering the love for plants my little garden in Portland once gave me. I've started painting watercolors of the fairies and the gray, moody skies over the water. They are amateurish and imperfect, but they are mine. On one of those ferry rides, I met a man named Arthur, a retired history professor with kind eyes and a laugh that reached them. We share a love for old books and quiet companionship. It isn't a grand passion, it is a gentle, respectful peace, a love that studies rather than consumes. Have you ever felt it, that chilling realization that the love you receive is conditional, tied directly to what you can provide? Have you ever sat in a room full of your own family and felt utterly alone, an inconvenient ghost haunting their lives? Have you laid awake at night, the silence pressing in, and asked yourself, do they miss me, or just what I used to give them? If you are listening to this, and that question resonates in the quiet corners of your heart, know this: you are not finished. Your worth is not a currency to be spent on others. Until it is gone, it does not diminish with age or fade. When your hands grow tired, it is inherent, it is indelible, and it is yours to protect. They may call you selfish for finally saying no, they may call you a burden for needing something in return, but dignity does not ask for permission, and kindness, true kindness, is a gift, not a debt. And when that gift is abused, you have every right to take it back. It is never too late to reclaim your name, your peace, your life, not as the person they wanted you to be, but as the person you have always been. You are not an afterthought. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You are the protagonist, the keeper of your own truth, the architect of your own justice. The strongest person in the room is often the one they never saw coming, and when a woman who has been silent for too long finally decides to speak, it is not just a story she tells, it is a world being remade.